Hey folks, hope you guys are having a great Saturday. Let's go ahead and get going on this. Do a very quick little talk and analysis on, I don't know, a little story that been making the rounds, I guess, on Twitter. I'm hesitant to call it a story. It's called The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. It's by Ursula K. Le Guin. I'll just link you the text. It's a very short read if you want to read it. And let me give you the basic. I did like a super short analysis on Twitter, so I'll also link just the website version of that. I just took my Twitter thread and just like copy pasted it onto my blog, dvspress.com, so you can check that out if you want and have it in a little bit more compact form than this, but I thought I'd elaborate a little bit. I don't want to spend too much time talking about it because it's actually very short, and it's an aphorism, not really a story. There's not characters and plot. There's just a setting which is described in a frame to try to give you a moral question, and then it just departs from there. So it's one of these pieces that I think because of its construction, because it actually doesn't sketch in a lot of details, there's actually more room for a discussion because it's not clear on a bunch of things. And that's by intention. I think it's constructed in a very somewhat unique way. The truth is that it's not exploring a lot of questions that haven't already been explored prior to its publication in the 1970s, even by like Star Trek, which is the question of what are the limits of the hedonistic calculus when talking about utilitarianism. Utilitarianism, in case you don't know, is a philosophy created by Jeremy Bentham. And the basic idea is what is moral is that which produces the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. So this is a very appealing philosophy for materialists because it gives some sort of consequentialist idea there that like we could figure out the correct things to do based on how happy they make people, because happiness is obviously good. It's taken as a obvious thing that happiness is good. So it explores those limits. And it does that in basically a couple of quick steps here. So the first thing that happens is the narrator asks you, the reader, to imagine a utopia with whatever you think should be there to make people happy. And there's a bunch of suggestions that are given. People don't wear clothes. There's it'll have all the pleasures, including sinful pleasures that you could imagine with no downsides. That's what the narrator is asking you to imagine. So as much sex as you want with no downsides. Children produced through sex are not going to be like neglected, or they're all loved by the community. People tend to look at this as like, oh, this is a leftist utopia. It's really just imagine your utopia. It's materialist, pleasure-centered utopia. That is, it's a belief that utopia arises from experiencing sensory pleasures. There's drugs. If you feel like people need drugs, then there's drugs there. But the drugs don't have any negative consequences. They're just there. They're only the good sides with none of the downsides. That's what she asks you to imagine. Third step is she just says you don't believe that. Obviously, you don't believe it. But built into the don't believe it is the belief that you can't have all these pleasures without downsides. I'll get to that in a minute. And so she creates a negative condition which makes all the infinite pleasure without any downsides possible. And that is the constant neglect and abuse of a single innocent child who's like locked in the basement naked in his own filth. And so she describes it in graphic detail, and it's kind of a punch in the face sort of thing. And then the next step of the story, of the aphorism, is most people are revolted when they find out about this, so they go through a period where they question it, but then they decide that they have to, that's the consequence for the utopia that they happen to live in. Then you have all these post hoc rationalizations, basically on the side of the people. The narrator is unreliable, and so the narrator's more or less on the side of the people giving these post hoc rationalizations. The child can't really be saved because no one's talked to it in so long. It couldn't experience pleasure. It could only understand fear if it were to be taken out of its shadowy basement. Basically all these things that you can't really fix the child. There's no really an ability to help save the child in some particular way. So all these post hoc rationalizations for why really you don't go and save the child. And then number 7, last step, some people walk away. So the unreliable narrator wonders why people walk away. She says they seem to be knowing where they're going. So some people choose not to accept that. So the extremity of the moral calculus here is that you have infinite pleasure with no downsides, except for one downside, which is basically the extreme pain and neglect abuse of an innocent child. And the child is very important because the child is innocent. This is not a criminal who deserves it. There's no karmic retribution here. Rather, the entire system is dependent upon this. And if you would remove the child, then all the infinite pleasure would go away. And so the question is whether that is tolerable or not in that extreme. And I guess her conclusion is that most people choose to live in the state where there is that trade-off. And some people, so they live in a state basically of cognitive dissonance, that they can be happy if it's at somebody else's expense. So the other thing that you have to think about is the people who walk away, they can't tolerate that particular kind of dissonance. And so they go and just depart. So the thing about the utopia is that there's a couple problems with the piece that are pretty obvious if you've really studied philosophy or if you have studied theology and you're a religious person, really almost regardless of what kind of religion, but I'm going to take the Christian side of this. On one level, I think it's just an interesting extreme of the hedonistic calculus because people already do this. They already rationalize things in their mind. A lot of times you buy clothes and they're made in a third world country. Maybe there's like child labor involved in making Nikes or something, but you wear them because you have to have shoes. And so in order to have shoes, you have to buy the products of child labor. It's actually very difficult to completely avoid consuming products that are the result of child labor. So you already do this. Well, everybody gets to enjoy cheap shoes. The poor people of America can have cheap shoes, and the only people that suffer are some third world people locked away in a basement far away. It's not presented in that same kind of extreme, but the reality is that people kind of tolerate this amount of dissonance on a daily basis. The other thing about the tale, again, it's an old tale of like a scapegoat or a whipping boy, which is to say people have a psychic need for someone to be punished, for example. That's the idea of a whipping boy or a scapegoat. So everybody has a psychic need for someone to be punished, so they punish the scapegoat, and then they feel better about themselves. It's a very, very old idea. So the problem, the first and most glaring and obvious problem with the ones that walk away from Omelas is the fact that the people who don't accept the condition walk away from it rather than destroying the system. So you're missing the third moral option, which is to save the child. So yes, the child, maybe all these rationalizations are true. The child can't experience pleasure, whatever. He could still be in a better situation than he is. And if you have the power to change it, ought you to do that? That's a real moral question. You should be able to save the child. So never do we get the question of somebody's going to go in and destroy the system and punish the people of Omelas for experiencing utopia at the expense of this child who's abused. So that's the other side. So the child could be saved. That's a moral action. Punishing the people of Omelas would also be a moral action because they are experiencing all their pleasure at the expense of something horrific. But that's not really presented as an option. So that's the first and most, I guess, glaringly obvious thing that's missing. We don't know why this is missing. Could be Le Guin just didn't think of it, or it could be that if you were to introduce that, she'd have to write an actual book with characters and plot because you'd have to have some kind of thing that somebody does to change the situation. And this is really just an aphorism to present a moral question. I think an even bigger criticism in a lot of ways, though, besides the missing third option, is simply that this presentation of utopia is entirely materialistic and wouldn't be believed. So the idea, it's not that it wouldn't be believed because there's no downside. It wouldn't be believed because pleasure does not create happiness. So in the Christian worldview in particular, having sensory pleasures does not produce happiness in any way, shape, or form. You can talk to many people who have walked the path of hedonism. hedonism doesn't make you happy. In fact, it makes you emptier and more miserable. So the reality is that from a more traditional view of the pleasures of this world, established by, at this point, thousands of years of Christian tradition, and going back further than that with Jewish tradition, there's the Eastern traditions of Buddhism. The idea that getting pleasure is a problem only because there's negative consequences is not true. You can experience pleasure and have none of the negative punishments and still feel worse and empty than you did before. This has to do with the general arrangement of things, that pleasure exists in the context of other things, right? So the feast after the fast is very pleasurable because pleasure exists in the contrast. You can't have constant pleasure without any downsides, and if you did, you would not be satisfied and empty, because you would not be satisfied and happy, because satisfaction comes from communion with God, not from experiencing physical pleasures. In the Eastern tradition, it would be more like, like Buddhism. It would be, rather than meeting or fulfilling your desires being the utopia, it would be transcending the desires. And of course, the narrator's like giving you lots of suggestions for what the pleasures are. Orgies, or, the temples are empty. It's kind of like a John Lennon Imagine song. There's no one in the temples. People can have sex if they want. They can do drugs if they want. And there's no negative No, that wouldn't produce happiness. It would produce hell. In fact, it would actually produce hell. It would be like a depraved Sodom place, even without the tortured child. So that's one of the big problems, is that it's completely materialistic, but I see why it's appealing. And it kind of represents the boomer mentality exiting the 60s, which is they were keenly aware of the downsides of pleasure seeking. That is, free love producing things like sexually transmitted diseases, or children out of wedlock who aren't cared for, drugs producing things like addiction, poverty, death, misery, people dying of drug overdoses, right? So all of the pleasures that were just abundant in the 60s and people thought they could just recklessly abuse turned out to have negative consequences. So the imagination of the utopias, could we have the 60s, because this was written in, I think, 1974, could we have the 60s, but without any of the bad stuff? That would be utopia. No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't be utopia. So really, that boomer mentality, I think, extends far beyond just this little idea of like sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But in the way the boomer's entire life is omelos, and the tortured child is basically their descendants who have, trillions and trillions of dollars of debts on their heads, that their futures basically were sacrificed to provide for the present of the baby boomers and their political machinations. The death of thousands of people in foreign countries who didn't need to die in useless foreign wars, which were created by baby boomers. So in a way, even though most of these things didn't happen until decades after this is written, the materialistic utopian attitude of pleasure seeking on the part of the baby boomers continues, and has really harmed the society and harmed their descendants in a very significant way. But they haven't thought about changing the system or upending it or saving their children, because that would mean they'd have to give up what they have. So anyway, there's my little analysis of that. You can read it on my website if you want a much more compact one, if you want. And there you go. Yeah, it sounds like a poor man's version of Ivan Karamazov's complaint against God and his desire to return his ticket. Yes, exactly. That's correct. So there's nothing really new about the story. It's very short. You can read it yourself. What I think makes it interesting is the presentation, where the narrator's basically asking you to imagine your own utopia and just suggesting things. But the suggestions are all very, focused on sinful pleasures without consequence. And so that's really what the narrator's trying to direct you towards. Would you play video games all day and still be able to eat, all those sorts of things? Yeah, every American child of the past 50 years is, from one point of view, a fortunate survivor. It's an interesting, anyway, so there's that. I'll give you one more line that basically has come out of some conversations on Twitter, and that is, this is a metaphor for child abuse in science fiction and fantasy fandoms in the 60s, 70s. So this was written, I think, before most of the big stuff started to come out about child abuse. And if you're not aware of the very significant child abuse that occurred in science fiction and fantasy fandoms, I don't know quite what to direct you towards. There's Moira Graylin's book, The Last Closet, which is, her mother was Marion Zimmer Bradley, who wrote The Mists of Avalon, and basically was a horrible sexual child abuser, along with her, especially her husband. So anyway, you can look at that. I know Castelia House has published stuff on this. So anyway, the idea here is that this is a metaphor. Like, everyone in the science fiction and fantasy fandom accepts the horrible abuse of children, because if they were to try to disrupt that system, they would no longer have this science fiction and fantasy fandom, which they love, this group of people that love them for writing science fiction stories. I think that's probably a bit, I don't have any reason to believe that Le Guin is actually thinking that, but I think it's a very interesting line to think of, because I think it just kind of goes together with a lot of the moral compromises that generation especially made. Well, you tolerate the abuse of the kid because you don't want to lose Worldcon, things like that. So anyway, another little line of analysis that you can think about with that. So let's get to some games. Do you feel the same way about Brave New World, about not wanting to change the world, or is the presentation about how the people see the world different? I'm not sure about Brave New World in that way. I think certainly people can be imprisoned into thinking the world is like unchangeable. I don't know. I think if you were going to write something like this in 2000, what are we in? We're in 2021. I think if you were going to write something like this in 2021, I think the question would really be, here we go, let's get this going here. Would you overthrow the system or not? Because, there it goes. All right. A lot of times this is presented as with no conclusion in the past, so that you have to think about what you would do. I think now I'd probably just write a story where somebody attempts to do that, attempts to upend the system. There we go. Final Fantasy V. This is the PlayStation 1 version, by the way. I haven't played much since we last had this. Oh, I forgot to do an announcement here. I'm going to cut back on live streams. I'm going to keep doing the Saturday streams. I'm going to skip streams during the week for the next 6 weeks or so. And certainly the next 4 weeks, because I just really got to catch up on some writing projects and get those out and get all that stuff squared away for people and get ready for... this is kind of a weird little music tune. Get things ready for Amazon Vela and to try out that platform and see if I can get that really going good. Let me see if I think I have equipment for everybody in this little town. I think we could just leave this town. Yeah, Imagine is it's not a bad song from a compositional standpoint. It's really just, I think it's very naive. Again, it's materialist. It's imagining like, oh, wouldn't the world be better without religion? No, it wouldn't. I think I have all these. What do you think of the argument the system would help more children than it would hurt? Yeah, so that's again, that's a utilitarian argument. So it just presents it in the extreme. Could those children actually be helped at the expense of another child? In other words, because the goal of utilitarianism is happiness, the bigger question there is, could you even be happy? Is it even possible to be happy knowing this? And if it's not possible to be happy knowing this, then what are you doing? Let's see what he's got for sale here. You know, if I mute, We got those. Why sleep? In other words, like, you know, knowing if the children grow up to know that they exist at the expense of another, long term, is their happiness even possible? And that's, I guess, one of the questions of that story, and a lot of stories dealing with hedonistic calculus sort of things. Yeah, see, he's got those. Great. I kind of like that it's all the magic's like automatic there. Hello. I say it's naive because, like, a lot of baby boomers are, for lack of a better term, spiritually retarded. They're naive because they didn't learn enough. They're not religious enough. Got a world map? Press square to view it. Did you hear about that huge meteorite that fell in Tycoon? I did hear about that. Oh, there's a little path here. Okay. Find out what's in here. Oh, got some gold. Anything in the stove? Can check this barrel. The clock? No, nothing back here. Imagination can't set a limit to any idea, the world and all its possibilities. Lenin proposing a single image as valid universal desire is wrong. Yeah, I think it's maybe his, but, like, it's very much part of the 60s mentality that, like, somehow it's the world and its institutions which create the corruption, and if we were free of those, then we'd be happier. And I think there needs to be more thought than that. I'm getting better all the time. It's an empty room here. Is there a secret? Anyway, you can read that piece for free. I think I put a link to it. It's not a very long read. I find it more interesting to talk about because I think it represents a worldview that is just really at odds. Here tell dragon grass grows in the hills up north. The crabgrass is choking it out. You have a worldview that is very kind of endemic to the baby boomer thoughts. One that I think is a little bit short-sighted. Why do you play this game? I'm playing all the Final Fantasy games. What a weird question. Here we go. Here we go. The Kingdom of Waltz is south of here, beyond the sea. There's a machine there that amplifies the power of the water crystal. We've got to stop it. How can we get to Waltz? No more boats around here now that the winds died down. I had no Hydra either. Sorry, Ferris. Jojo, can't you think of anything? Let's see. Wind's out, ocean's out. Scratching his head. It's like that Skinner meme. I am the sinful one? No, the world must be the sinful one. If we can't use the ocean, then we'll have to go on land, huh? Let me see. I might need some more items. Let me see what items I've got. Oh yeah, I've got stuff. Yeah, I've got stuff. Oh, I need to put on some equipment. Optimize. Optimum. There we go. Alright, that's a little better. No, it's the children who are wrong. Winds died down. Won't be any more boats either. If we can't use the ocean, then I think we actually have to get a dragon from up north. I think that's what we have to do. They kind of hinted at that. Lizards and other hibernating animals can't stand the cold. Oh, great. See what this guy has to say. Now that the wind's weakened, no more ships will come to Waltz. He just keeps scratching his head. We can't use the ocean. What do we do? Who knows? Alright, let's just go. Yeah, we can't get over the mountain, so I think we have to go up north here. And then there's like a, yeah, there's like a little thing we can do up here. I am playing this on my PlayStation Vita, by the way. Actually, let's try stealing. See if the monster has anything to steal. Couldn't steal. Good to know. I like how rods count as a ranged weapon in this one, too. I think one of the things you can actually do is have all your guys be monks early on. And then you can, like, they can double attack empty-handed. So you don't have to worry about, like, rods and stuff like that. But I'm not going to worry too much about that today. All right, there's the dragon path. And I think we ride a dragon south. And I steal from the bull. Let's find out. Monks are legitimately really overpowered early in the game. Get that bighorn. Do you think things like love and happiness should not be sought, but instead purpose and contentment? From their happiness and love will come. I don't know. I don't know how you just seek purpose and contentment necessarily in the absence of those things. It's really more that, like, seeking happiness. Like, what does that even mean? The question is, like, if you're going to seek happiness, then you have to know what brings happiness to begin with. So the assumption that, like, oh, I'll be happy if I have a family. Not necessarily. You know, some people are happy with the family, some people won't be. Will I be happy as a monk? Well, not necessarily. You know, so the kind of built into the question is what is the happiness? I don't think it's wrong to seek pleasure necessarily either, but certainly if you're seeking pleasure in the absence of other things, then it's going to be a detriment to you. Some kind of weird little refresh problem going on with my screen. Things look a little weird. Let's do... Actually, we'll use the tonic, since we have lots of those. We need to be using those. They're very useful. When you get to Final Fantasy VII, are you going to play them both or just pick the original one? Well, that's the question. That's a question. Do we want to play... you know, do we want to play the PlayStation original, which I have, exactly as it was in 1997 or whatever? Do we want to play a PC version of that, which I have, with mods, so it looks a lot better than it did back in 1997? Do we want to play Remake? But the thing is, Remake only does not even all of disc 1. So you could do Remake, and then I could pull up a save file that's like after Remake, and then continue on. You know, there's options there. Try to make those decisions kind of as we go as far as what versions I want to play. You know, some versions are going to be better than others. The remake is very decompressed, meaning like you go through the story way slower. It's great gameplay. So I recommend Final Fantasy VII Remake simply because the gameplay is really good. Not so much for the story, but not enough MP. There we go. I like this rock cutter. It's like the two tablets here. Play the original. It's just like the original has just aesthetically it's aged so poorly. Like how there's 2 stones here. And you have to destroy both of them. Not enough MP. So it just tries to cast spells but doesn't have magic to do it? That's so weird. Not a fan of the new story of the remake. It also changes Aerith into a love interest. In the original, Cloud didn't really love Aerith. He only cared about her because Zack talked about her. People got really broken up about Aerith dying in the original. So I mean, if I were making the remake, I would be like, let's make a way to save Aerith. Because I think that would actually be really an interesting change. It's like fans want it, and it'd be really cool if there was actually like a way to have that as part of the thing. Yeah, somehow because of the refresh difference, you may not see that like I'm targeting everybody, as I realize. Because there's like this is occurring at a slightly lower frame rate than what it should, I guess. Try to mess with it a little bit. I'm gonna get rid of these stones. I wonder if it's one of those cases where the stones will auto-counter with Osmos if hit with magic, or otherwise gain MP under some circumstances. That's probably right. This is the PlayStation remake, because the Super Famicom one is Japanese only. You could use a fan translation. That is an option. Excuse me. But I elected not to do that because I have the PlayStation version, so we'll play that. And it's loaded on my Vita and being played through Adrenaline, but you get the idea. These guys have tonics, so I'm going to steal from them. The expansion for Final Fantasy VII Remake is exclusive to the PlayStation. You're going to get a PS5 to play it. I couldn't get a PS5 if I wanted to get one. So that's kind of irrelevant. You know? Hey, are you going to get a PS5 to play it? How am I going to get a PS5? You know, you can only order them online, which means that only people who are going to run like... basically, people who are going to run bots to order it are going to be able to order it. The only people who can get it, unless you're like particularly lucky, is resellers. And that's not only going to stop once there's so many in the market for resale that it's just not worth it to try to get them anymore. But you know, overall, like I can't think of a good reason to own a PlayStation 5 right now. People have said, oh, it makes your older games look better. Yeah, I could rebuy like all the games I cared about on PC and they'd look better too. Because my PC is still more powerful than a PlayStation 5. Like, and my PC's old. It's like 5 years old. Like that's the reality of a lot of this stuff. Is you know, consoles are still using hardware that like is not as good as your PC from a couple years ago. Couldn't steal. Alright, I think I already stole a tonic. Oh well. When I played the original Final Fantasy VII, I got my game hard locked in between the Genova fight where Aerith dies and the wall boss right after. I was strong enough to beat the Genova fight, but not the wall one. I heard the wall... There's always a wall fight in all these games. Like after, I think, Final Fantasy IV. And it's always like... Oh no, Final Fantasy III, I think it was the first one that had a wall. Like a demon wall. It's always like a DPS challenge. You know, can you do enough damage to get through it? Cat Kick. If you want to play some multi-platform games on PS5, there's really no reason to get it unless you really want Demon's Souls or Returnal. I have the original Demon's Souls for PS3. You know, it's a PS3. It's not a new game. I just could play it on PS3. Oh well, the new one's in like it's like completely revamped and looks better. I think aesthetically it may actually not be as good as the original. Just from what I've seen. Yeah, it's higher fidelity, but it's not better. Go. One of the few places in the game where you could save after a boss fight and there's no encounters between the next boss fight. Use that tonic on yourself, bro. Yeah, it's higher fidelity, but the visual design is not as good as the original Demon's Souls. Yeah, graphics, but worse visually speaking. Yeah, I can see that. Is that there's a difference between fidelity and aesthetic quality. Yeah, the PlayStation 3 original is not as sharp. But the overall designs, I think, look better on the PS3 original. Just my opinion. I've talked about this with Gaming Ground Zero. Really, there's very little progress that happens after about 2007 in terms of game design and even in terms of visual design. Like, games got high fidelity after 2007 and we haven't had an improvement in aesthetics. We've just had like finer detail. Like, things aren't prettier than they were necessarily. They just they're sharper. Like, the graphics are sharper, not prettier. You can play 4K Blu-ray movies on the PS5. I did not play the PS4 remake of Shadow of the Colossus. I did not play that. The Mass Effect remaster still kind of pissing me off. There's so many things that just stand out like a sore thumb. Yeah, I think it actually looks worse. You know, it's like, oh, we redid these models to be higher fidelity, and it's like, they look worse. The overall design, especially Mass Effect 1, just looks worse. And the big reason it looks worse is they didn't realize what made the game visually appealing to begin with. Like, its darkness, its grittiness, the way that the lighting was, the high contrast lighting, they gave it kind of a noir feel. All those things made Mass Effect 1 have a strong visual appeal. So as you remove those things and you're just like, well, here's some high fidelity models, everything looks more... It just looks plainer and more boring. It doesn't look nearly as interesting. Kind of like this music. Why make a good remaster when you can make money making a remaster of a remaster? I heard they were going to remake The Last of Us, the original Last of Us. I heard they were going to do that, which to me is just like, why? Oh, because we think we could make money with it. That's why. Rock Cutter's what that thing's called. I think it's a slug. Yeah, I think it's like a slug. They have no idea regarding art design, visual design, but also just intended materials. Yeah, I mean, I think I went over this with the remaster of The Last Remnant. I'm like, the PC version running on Unreal Engine 3 looks superior to, say, like, definitely the Switch version, but probably the PS4 version as well. The lighting effects are, quote, better. Not really. They're not really better because people designed the graphics with the lighting effects of Unreal Engine 3 in mind. So it actually doesn't really look better at all. It looks like a side grade at best. And the PC version, with all of its ability to pump the graphics up more than on your console, the PC version still looks better. But you can't get the PC version on Steam anymore. Once they came out with the remaster, they took the original PC version down. But the original PC version has effects in it that are missing from the new one, for example. So the PC version of Last Remnant is really the one to play if you can get your hands on a copy. Actually, let's see if I can go down through there. Nope. Here's the way out. Flowers. Uh-oh. I'm poisoned. Oh, if you touch the flowers, you get poisoned. Oh, boy. That's lovely. So do not touch the flowers, I think. This jacket doesn't look like leather anymore, it's just shiny hexagons. But I have no idea what it's supposed to be made of. Small details like that really bug the crap out of me, especially with Mass Effect 1, which is my favorite of the series. I mean, even now I'm rambling. Yeah, Mass Effect 1 is definitely my favorite by a wide margin. It's the one with the best, I think, visual appeal, best story by far, best exploration of characters, best gameplay, combat. Mass Effect 2 really just became Gears of War Sci-Fi Edition. Well, Gears of War is already sci-fi, but Gears of War Interplanetary Edition. There was really no discernible gameplay differences between that and like a Gears of War game. I mean, there's a couple. Like, you still have some like powers you can use, for instance, but you know, having to here's an encounter. You know, all right, here's an encounter. All the enemies spawn. Okay, I killed them. Now it's time to play my least favorite game. Find the ammo. So you just walk around trying to find ammunition. Alright. Let's save the game. I don't think I have a tent, though. Oh, I do. Let's use our tent. Yeah, the flowers kill you. Mass Effect 1 was much better than the others. I've read all the Codex things you unlocked. It also would change the ammo type for all fights. Yeah, Mass Effect 2, it's just like, alright, on Nightmare in particular, Nightmare wasn't that hard. It just took longer to get through the encounters. Get through the encounters, kill all the guys, walk around, because you killed dozens more guys than on normal. You always had full ammo, even on Nightmare mode. You never had to really conserve your ammo, except within the context of one fight. You get your ammo, go on to the next encounter, kill all the guys, wander around in circles, getting all the ammo so that you have enough ammo to do, that was just it. It ended up being not even really more difficult, like very slightly more difficult and more just like a bigger time sink, which kind of sucked. That wasn't the case with like the hardest mode in Mass Effect 1. You actually had to coordinate and strategize with your guys. You get charged by different guys. You'd have to throw them in the air. You had to play the game a lot differently in Mass Effect 1. You had to play it on harder modes. All right, save. I'm almost out of time here. I have a kid's birthday party that is happening in 40 minutes. I like how they have a little bit different. There you go. Oh yeah, they used to have different armor you could wear. They just removed a ton of gameplay elements in the later ones. That was the case for every single BioWare RPG. Like Dragon Age Origins went from like really complicated D&D 3.0 kind of setups to just here's a talent tree where you just pick every talent. No real difference between armor, things like that. You used to put on a bunch of different pieces of armor. Like Dragon Age Origins was just so much better in terms of gameplay than any game that came after it. They stripped all the gameplay out of it. They're like, you know what? People who are stupid... Oh, here we go, cutscene. People who are stupid may not understand this, might find this too complicated. Even though we gave them difficulty sliders, You could choose easy mode. We better get rid of some gameplay elements and streamline the game. No, that makes it way less fun. Oh no, she's been poisoned. Reyna! Magisa. Whoa, I came here looking for flying dragons, but found something even better. Dragons. Yeah, I could sell their horns for a fortune. Well, if it isn't the Princess of Tycoon, she'll make a wonderful souvenir. Step off, you mangy cur. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Ferris! Oops. Far down go boom. Wahaha! What the? She's climbing back up. I did not play Cyberpunk 2077 and I won't play it. At least not for a long time. Alright. Just hang on, Reyna. Now I'll just have to kill all of you. Alright. Let's steal from her, see what that does. Nothing to steal. Item. I have an antidote here. Here we go. Magissa. Oh, it's a girl. It's a sexy elf. Evil elf. Well, she's really targeting Galoof there. I really didn't like him. Yeah, there's a distance between Mass Effect 2. Mass Effect 2 is really all about style. And so, yeah, they over-sexualized the characters because they thought that would sell well. And to a certain extent, it does. But yeah, it doesn't have the right tone compared to the first one. I mean, it really feels like a different company made Mass Effect 2, and probably to some extent, that's exactly what happened. Like, it really was a different company. Have everyone junk out in Mass Effect 4. Falzer. Whoa, that hit hard. Gear him up. Mass Effect 2 ported its cutscenes in budget and glorifying the elusive man and the writer's self-insert. All of the shots on... What is this? I'm sorry. I missed it. There's a lot of shots on, like, butts and things like that. They really come off as just a bit silly. Yeah, Mass Effect 2's RPG elements were really dumbed down. I also felt like they moved very stiffly. They're like, in Mass Effect 2, it just felt weird. Mass Effect 1 wasn't perfect graphically, but there was a grittiness to it that was great. Take all. Got a whip. Goes from art design and style focus, clear ideas and homages to this and that, to going full on former Hollywood sexy. Yeah. Thanks, Ferris. Don't touch the flowers. Oh, the dragon! Woo! The dragon! 'Tis a terrible wound! It's all right, dragon. We're here to help you. Raina, what are you doing? It's all right. Stay back. He needs these. Use this on him, quick. Something no one talks about is how the story for Mass Effect 2 never advances the series' main plot. I talk about it. Maybe I'll do like a retrospective on the trilogy before they do this remake. Or remaster. Why'd you have to go and do that? Raina's poison is gone. Thank you, dragon. She's healed, so let's go. I really don't like high places. Ha ha ha. What's so funny? Come on, we're flying out of here. Yeehaw. Maybe he's supposed to have a draw. Come on, we're flying out of here. Yeehaw. I'll give him a draw. Why not? Rather than like a country accent. Like an English country accent. Boy, those mountains look nice. These original... Oh, I could just fly on him. Oh, that's cool. Okay. Aha! That's what we do. Fly all around. Instead of an airship, we get a dragon. There's the tower. Is that where we're trying to go? Or to the kingdom, I think. That's where we're trying to go. Alright, well, I'm going to call it there because we're really close to an hour. We got the dragon. So we'll do all the other stuff next time or whatever. It may take me like 2 months to get through this game because I want to cut down on the live streams to finish up some books and get those out. So yeah, that's what I'm probably going to do going forward. And that's what's what. Yeah, I like the dragon music too. Here, we could listen to it while we go out. Go out here. All right. All right, thanks, guys. Thanks for stopping by for an hour and hanging out with me. Have a great rest of your Saturday. I'll have more content coming as I can get it. I'm going to have more of the mini content instead of the live streams because it's just less time intensive for me to do that, to do like a couple commentary vids and get a few thousand views and kind of do the channel that way rather than... I like live streams better because I like the interaction. I like to talk about Mass Effect and stuff and hearing what other people have to say about it, because I think it's just more fun. But I really need to I got to get a couple books prepped. I want to do this Kindle Vela thing, and I really want to basically throw a bunch of shit at the wall and see what sticks. In order to do that, I got to have a lot of stuff prepped and ready to go for that, and to kind of see what is going to happen with that, I really got to be prepared. So that's what I want to do for that, and I also want to put out a couple more books definitely this summer. Including one I wrote last year and didn't put out because I was like, after the election happened, I'm like, it's just not the right time for a tragedy. So put out a tragedy at a different time. So that'll be this year. And I'll see you guys next time. Let's get the books going. There we go. And I'll see you next time. Have a great one, guys.